My goodness, everybody. Hello, welcome to the breach. That's what we're doing today. I know people might have expected the old jazz intro, which is our late night show, but this is a little bit different. It's a little bit more sober. Obviously, there's going to be times as I'm going through all of these texts that, listen, you could laugh, but I got a feeling you'll laugh in horror. So, hello, I'm Denver Riggleman. Everybody, I think, pretty much knows me, but I'm going to introduce myself. Former congressman from Virginia. But before I was ever in Congress, I was in counterterrorism, data analytics. I was Air Force intelligence, worked at the National Security Agency, did joint special operations support, mission planning. As far as military is concerned, working with data, whether it's computer network operations, identifying bad actors, finding a needle in a bucket of needles. That's pretty much what my team did. So I've had a hell of a background when it comes to military intelligence, joint operations, tracking individuals, communications, and telephony. I also own distilleries, whiskey distilleries, which a lot of people know. But the reason I can do this is I was a senior technical advisor on the January 6th committee. And today, not only am I going to read selected text or all the text from 10 specific individuals, I'm also going to give some context. So I know that we're live. Oh, we got special people coming into the chat right now. So we have 10 people, more or less. Now there's some other things I can get into as far as context, but the January 6 text messages, Mark Meadows text messages, was something that was given voluntarily to the committee. I would say, gosh, back in November, December of 2021. These text messages were really the baseline for how the investigation was structured. And I know we're live, but we have construction outside right now. So Doug, give 1 second, and we're going to rock and roll this really quickly. I want to make sure that there's no noise coming in because these January 6 text messages are very, very important. So give me 1 second, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to get this. This is live. Sometimes there's weird things that happen, and what you're hearing right now back there is a grinder. Now, this isn't a weird club. It's actually a grinder. So give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So here we go. The first thing that we're going to do is Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I'm going to start with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I'm going to end with Don Jr. But we have some special people here today to help read. Really happy to be here. There's some things I want to explain before we do that, because I have some very, very important people that are going to read some of these text messages to get the effect of it. And while the individuals are reading the text messages, and these are people I very much respect, I might be interjecting with context because there's acronyms and certain things that no matter how much you prepare, you're going to you need to do this for the past 3 to 4 years, but also have been a former member of the Republican Party to know some of these structures. So that's why when I interject, it's not like, oh my God, Denver's getting in the way of the reading. I want to make sure that you, the people that are watching, completely understand what's happening today. I'm excited about doing this, not because I think this is fun or joyful, right? Today, I don't have a whiskey with me. I have water. The reason I'm doing this, I got to keep my voice here. As you can see, I bought the grandma glasses so I can read. You guys got the whole benefit of Denver Riggleman experience today and with the people that are here. But I want to say that the text messages for Mark Meadows was the beginning of the investigation. This is almost like part 1. Part 2, part 3, part 4, if you're talking about data, you're talking about the metadata, the phone calls, the fact that the Oath Keepers were texting White House staff, the fact that there were phone calls between rally planners in the White House, but also people that were directly linked to the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers that were really interacting with White House staff. We had the phone numbers. The metadata is huge. It's something called the monster, as you guys know, my book, The Breach, right? And this is why I have all this context. And why when I interject with individuals that are speaking, again, I want you to know I'm just trying to give you context, but also the reader who knows a lot about this still might have all the background because I had the good fortune of being the senior technical advisor. So here we go. This is going to be pretty exciting. So I want to get started immediately because I think that's the best way to go. If anybody needs to know who the people are that are coming on, you can actually look them up on Wikipedia or Google. And there's some things I'm going to ask you to Google. I also hope you have a pencil and paper. There might be things you want to write down to look at. If you haven't read my book, The Breach, there are going to be some things that might be confusing. I can address that in later shows. Also, if I think it's confusing, I'm going to try to address it immediately. If there's an acronym you don't know, write down the acronym and look it up. And I'm telling you that will help you as we're going through these text messages. Now, these text messages could take 90 minutes or 3 hours. You don't have to stay with us the whole time, but I hope you do. This is January 6th, the 5-year anniversary. So before I start, I'm going to now, I want to dedicate this to the United States Capitol Police. I want to dedicate this to the January 6th committee and the color teams that ran the investigation. I want to dedicate this to the committee members. I want to dedicate this to the staff that did so much work, and to my guys on the technical team who did incredible work on a bare bones budget. When you're talking about Jack Smith, though, and you're talking about the investigation there, let's applaud the individuals that went all in and aren't afraid to go in front of Congress and talk and tell people exactly how it is. This is dedicated to all of them. 5 years on, we still haven't come to any real conclusion on justice or those who should have been held accountable. And when you're looking at mass pardons of people that I was well aware of, you got to remember also we went through all the charging documents. When you're looking at all the sentencing memos, when you're looking at the people in the recidivism and those that are out there committing crimes again that were part of the J6 pardons, you should be absolutely horrified. So here we go. I hope you're ready. We're going to start with Marjorie JoJo from Jurors. If Joe could jump on, that would be awesome. Let's get her online. My gosh, it's JoJo from Jurors. How you doing?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you doing? I wish I was meeting you under different circumstances. But here we are. It's insane. And thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I wish they were different circumstances. And I never wanted necessarily to channel Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's right. And right now, and right now it says that the format. So right now you're having a tough time with the text messages.
Yeah, I think I can kind of work around it, because I don't know if my software is completely up to date. So some of the things are like weird question marks, but I think I can.
That's okay. This is the context I want to talk about. The problem, one of the problems we had, Joe, when we were doing this was that we know when something's been copy pasted and isn't the original, because when they copy paste text from phone records over into an Excel spreadsheet, it actually symbolizes some of the gaps in there. So you can actually ignore the gaps, right? So this is something, it's a teaching point for metadata. So there you go. So as I know it's sort of crazy. So for instance, on that first one, you see, when you say it, you see any type of thing in there, like we didn't, and you see a question mark.
Yeah.
You see that little apostrophe for didn't, that's actually an apostrophe, but when they do the copy paste, it actually changes into a question mark with a circle. So I usually know that's a conjunction. So those are the kind of things that we had to do for copy paste, for these type of things. So this is fantastic. Yes. So those are the things that's my fault. I should have told you that beforehand when we were going forward. So we're going to start. So the Marjorie Taylor Greene text. Now, if I do interject, JoJo, it's not because I'm trying to do anything crazy. It's because some of these things are so weird, even with your vast knowledge. The respect that I have for you to do this and to come on and do this with us is incredible. Even with your vast knowledge, some of this stuff is so obscure that I'm going to jump in. Like, for instance, at the end of the first text you read, I want you to stop very quickly. I'm going to explain it, then we're going to rock and roll. Okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Okay. So the date is December 31st, 2020 at 8:39 a.m. This is from Marjorie Greene to Mark Meadows. If you want to do it like this, it's up to you. I can help in this. So, but really just do date, from Marjorie to Mark, and we can go right down the line. These are pretty straightforward. So here we go. And we're starting December 31st, 2020, 8:39 a.m. And it's you.
Okay. I might need you to do the dates because I can't necessarily.
I can do that. Okay. You got it.
Good morning, Mark. Sorry, I had to do it. I'm here in DC. I'm not going to do the theatrical Southern, although I think I was Southern in a former life, and I want to say important. But okay,
yes,
we have to get organized for the 6th. And I can't see the whole screen. Shoot.
So it's okay.
I would like to meet with Rudy Giuliani again. We didn't get to speak with him long. Also, anyone who can help. We are getting a lot of members on board, and we need to lay out the best case for each state. I'll be over at CPI this afternoon. Now, I am also going to put on my glasses, Denver.
You got it. So CPI, for everybody out there, is the Conservative Partnership Institute. CPI is where the Freedom Caucus meets. So when she said CPI, you're talking about a meeting of the Freedom Caucus on December 31st is what she's actually talking about. Also, if you're looking at this, when we get a lot of members on board, that's actually what she's referring to, Joe. So for the listeners out there, CPI is the Conservative Partnership Institute. She's talking about a meeting with the Freedom Caucus with maybe Rudy Giuliani, and I can get into that a little bit more. Rudy Giuliani was such a huge part of this. So right off the bat, you guys got to remember, I was the first one to read these texts after we deciphered them and identified who the numbers belong to each person, Joe. So that's why I call these the bourbon texts, because I had to take a few drinks when we started. So here we go. So the next text, January 5th, 2021 at 2:30 p.m. from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Mark Meadows.
Last night, Senator Graham told me that if I found 100 names of dead voters in Georgia, that he would object. I have 100 dead voters' names! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Yeah, that was BS. So let's go to the next one. That was actually not true. Think about that. Lindsey Graham was also involved. So next one.
Tell President Trump, exclamation mark. Send them
Okay,
to
that's, yep, send them to him. So send them to him came from Mark Meadows. So when it says tell President Trump, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene saying we have the 100 dead voters. Now I want everybody to pay attention to this. Then it says, then Mark Meadows says to Marjorie Taylor Greene, send them to him. Now this is the chief of staff of the President of the United States wanting dead voters that turned out to be absolutely false. So that's what happened right here in these first four texts. That's why I think people need to hear this. So now the next text is January 5th, 2021 at 2:31 p.m. After Mark Meadows says send them to the president, which means Marjorie Taylor Greene had direct access. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to do this very quickly for you because this can get a little confusing. Do you have Senator Graham's contact? Mark Meadows goes, I do. It says question marks. That's actually not marks. Those were probably a period or just a gap, Joe. That's why this can get very confusing. And he goes, his cell, and yes. So Marjorie Taylor Greene by January 5th at 2:31 p.m. is calling the president to tell him about dead voters. So there you go. So are you tracking with me, Joe?
Yep, I'm right there. On the next one is Mark.
There we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
Mark, I was just told there is an active shooter on the first floor of the Capitol. Please tell the president to calm people. This isn't the way to solve anything.
Pretty interesting, isn't that, Joe? Pretty interesting, right? She already knew that it probably wasn't Antifa until the next text, which actually happened about 1 hour and I would say 17 minutes later, on January 6th, 2021 at 3:52 p.m. What did she say, Joe?
Mark, we don't think these attackers are our people. We think they are Antifa dressed like Trump supporters.
Now, we know that's not true. When I get to the Jason Miller text, Joe, at 3:45 p.m., Jason Miller was organizing the Antifa messaging with Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino. So just to let you know, 7 minutes after they were going to organize messaging by blaming it on Marjorie Taylor Greene was tweeting or texting that it was Antifa. Pretty interesting, right? Pretty interesting. So now we're January 7th, the day after.
Yesterday was a terrible day. We tried everything we could in our objection to the 6 states. I'm sorry, nothing worked. I don't think that President Trump caused the attack on the Capitol. It's not his fault. Antifa was mixed in the crowd and instigated it, and sadly, people followed. But when people try everything and no one listens and nothing works, I guess they think they have no other choice. Absolutely no excuse, and I fully denounce all of it. But after shutdown all year and a stolen election, people are saying that they have no other choice. I defended Trump last night on Newsmax. He has been the greatest president. I will continue to defend him. And you, if anyone attacks you, I hope you are okay. I feel badly for everyone.
You know, it's interesting. There should be an underline there that Antifa was mixed in the crowd and instigated it. And I guess what I'm telling everybody here, when we first read these text messages, this is what we saw. Because out of the 2,319 text messages and the hundreds of people on the text messages, there was actually timing for messaging on when to put out disinformation, Joe. So when you're talking about Antifa was mixed in the crowd, does everybody remember when Matt Gaetz said they had biometric proof from a biometric company that Antifa was in a crowd using facial recognition?
Yeah.
That company that he referred to that said they had biometrics, which they came back and said they didn't. Everybody can look this up. This is validated. That's the same guy who pushed Hunter Biden conspiracy theories, Jacob Applebaum. It's all the same people. It's all the same people. And then what's interesting after that, Mark says, thanks, Marjorie, right? If you look at the next one. And then at the bottom of the page, if you could read January 10th, we're now 4 days after January 6th. And it's all you. Start, hey, I need to. It starts with that.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I need to talk with President Trump. People are freaking out. The messages I'm getting show extreme fear of what is about to happen. I think some of their fears are warranted. However, these extreme fears could lead to out of control actions. Someone call me.
Oh, so now you're looking by January 10th, she's worried actually about more riots based on MAGA being absolutely incensed about the election. So that's pretty interesting. You already see violence, really being part of the underlying tone of MAGA at that point. Joe, are you good with the last 3 text messages?
Yeah.
Okay. These get a little crazy, so I hope everybody's buckled up.
I'm upset about that GOP conference call tonight. They want us to be quiet, not say anything. They are not going to tell people to vote against impeachment, and they are talking about censuring the president. They just want to welcome Biden in peacefully. This is the Democrat Party that aggressively attempted a coup the entire time Trump was in office. They are trying to impeach for a second time, for nothing. He did not cause the attack on the Capitol. Leadership is clueless about how the American people feel. They complained about the security at the Capitol and their lives being in danger. I told them when I talked, we should care about the American people who have dealt with riots and Antifa/BLM riots all year and had their businesses shut down, lost jobs, and cannot function normally. It's like they don't even care about anyone but themselves. I will not be quiet. I will not go along to get along. And I'm coming out swinging against these evil Democrats. That was the most disappointing call I've ever had.
What's amazing about that is the evil Democrats was used throughout the text messages, but also spiritual warfare. So a lot of this was almost a religious type of uprising that they thought they were having. But there's some other things in here. If you know why Marjorie Taylor Greene is so mad, Joe, think about what she's saying here and what she did to protect the president. And now he just called her a traitor, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I wanted to start with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I wanted people to understand why she's so angry. I mean, she went to the mattresses with conspiracy theories that are absolutely mind-blowing. If you think about, she's mad at the GOP conference call because we also know that as we're reading text, people like Sean Hannity, Don Jr. like, this isn't real. This isn't Antifa. Right. So think about that. Right. But she's still saying we got to do this. Now, you think this is disturbing. The next 2 are pretty interesting. When you look at what happened. So I got to give a little bit of context on this next one because it looks like it just starts at banned for, which either means there was a text missing that Mark Meadows didn't send, or she was so angry. I sort of know what she means on this one because she was banned from social media for things and banned by the party. If you remember those times, Jojo. I mean, I know we're going back 5 years, guys. So here we go. Right. So this is on January 17th. The next one's really interesting. She's talking about evil Democrats. You just read it, Joe. She's talking about she's upset at the GOP. The evil Democrats Trump had nothing to do with the coup. It was the Democrats that did it all. This is the Antifa conspiracy theory and the deep state globalist conspiracy theory about Dominion, which she was all over also. So let's go to the next one.
Banned for 12 hours for calling out our state leaders for changing nothing in our elections and losing our Senate seats, and calling out Dominion machines, saying, why are they suing everyone? If they just do forensic audits, then they will show nothing is wrong and there is no need for lawsuits, and talking about Biden and Burisma and Hunter's laptop.
Here we go. Everybody listening, the thousands of people right now. Hunter's laptop and the January 6th conspiracy theories, the January 6th stolen election conspiracy theories were part of the same op to overturn a fair election. When you're looking at Hunter's laptop, who are really in control of Hunter's laptop conspiracy theory? Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani ran the Russian team. Steve Bannon ran the Chinese team. Now, did Hunter do bad things? Yeah, but I did the forensics on those laptops too. And I will actually show some of the linkages between the same people that were part of the January 6th conspiracies and Hunter Biden's laptop. So Joe, I know that's right here in the text messages, everybody. I don't have to make things up. It's right here. So now This is the most disturbing one, is the last one, Joe. You're like, what? What? This is the most disturbing? But the last one, I cannot wait for you to read.
Okay. In our private chat with only members, several are saying the only way to save our republic is for Trump to call for martial law. I don't know on these things. I remember this one. I just wanted you to tell him. They stole this election. We all know they will destroy our country next. Please tell him to declassify as much as possible so we can go after Biden and anyone else.
So if anybody remembers this text message, Joe, martial law is spelled incorrectly.
Yeah, I remember
right?
that.
It's spelled like, my cousin Marshall.
Like
right?
Yeah.
Have a lot of cousins, some from West Virginia, right? So, like my cousin Marshall. But the issue that's really interesting is the next person I read, Ralph Norman, also talks about martial law and spells it the same way. But here's what I want to point out to everybody, and it might be obscure, but I need everybody to pay attention to what I'm about to say and what caught my attention as an intelligence officer with decades of experience. In our private chat with only members,
Mm-hmm.
in our private chat with only members, several are saying that we need martial law. But people don't understand, these text messages had nothing to do with the Signal chats and the WhatsApp chats that were going back and forth on some of the other dire sort of conspiratorial things that were happening. And the fact that there were several members, which probably were members of the Freedom Caucus, Joe, right? Probably, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But knowing Ralph Norman on there, I know these people personally. I know about the Signal chats. And that's why when I tell people to have the experience I did in the Republican Party and how information is passed, which is no different from the Democrats passing on Signal chats, but even every group, friend group, committee, and even caucus have their own Signal chats. Freedom Caucus has their own Signal and encrypted chats. So what bothered me most about that was that when she's talking about martial law, they're talking about instituting martial law on things that are fantastical and completely made up. And Joe, that's why I was so happy for you to read Marjorie Taylor Greene today. And before we go on to the next reading of text messages, those were all of them from MTG. Did you have any questions or comments? Because you deserve to have those questions or comments right now, Joe, for everything that you've done and what you do. So do you have any questions or comments on the text that you read?
I mean, I have questions or comments on all of it. Well, it's crazy to me that she's now left the House of Representatives. I guess my question, Denver, would be, since Marjorie Taylor Greene did that, since she left and she was called a traitor by this person that she went to the mats for on all this conspiracy stuff, why doesn't she spill the beans now? You know what I mean? Why doesn't she tell the truth about all of it now? Or do you think she legitimately believed that shit?
She legitimately believed it. And I think she still believes the January 6th election was stolen. And I think that's the thing that's been my biggest problem with all of this, is how do you argue with vapors?
Yeah.
If I have the facts and data, if we start off the text messages, we have the metadata, we know the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, we know that Roger Stone came up with Stop the Steal in 2016. We know that they were talking about this in the fall, right? Actually in the late summer, about how to actually manipulate and radicalize individuals that the election would be stolen. This was not something that just came out of nowhere. And I think when you're looking at the deep state conspiracy theories that really got going during the Obama era, specifically during the Tea Party era, when you're talking about birthers or you talk about 9/11 truthers, there seems to be this propensity on the far right to believe just about any kind of conspiracy theory if it has to do with the deep state or globalists. Think about QAnon, right? J6 trutherism, J6 deniers, those type of individuals, doesn't necessarily mean that they're grifters, but it does mean they're credulous. And it does mean that they lack certain types of critical thinking synapses when people actually respond to or present them with facts and data. I think she really believes it. I would love to sit down with Marjorie Taylor Greene and go over the evidence of all this. I think if I get with people one-on-one, I'm much more effective than one on a million, right? With all the people that are watching these text messages, they're like, we just went through the Marjorie Taylor text messages. There weren't that many, were there, Joe? But they were absolutely brutal. And she believed this. And what I would like to see Marjorie Taylor Greene do, she can come out and talk about Epstein. She can come out and talk about her being called a traitor. But what she needs to do is come out and say, I was wrong about January 6th. There's no way that election was stolen. And it's ludicrous to think otherwise. It's ludicrous because we already have, and the reason I start with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the other text messages actually document them changing their strategy as they went along. So just like with Antifa. So Joe, she really does believe this. And there's part of me, I have no love for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Everybody knows how I feel about those who are serving that mislead people.
Yeah.
Because I think stupidity is just as dangerous, right, as grifting. And stupidity can be more because those are true believers. And I would love to have that opportunity. If I sat down with Marjorie Taylor Greene one-on-one, I do have a feeling that at least I can get her to a place where she would maybe consider that January 6th was simply a fair election and there were bad actors who were radicalizing individuals to violence, but also really coup-like activities. So there you go. That's my answer, ma'am.
The last, then, if it's okay, I know we have more text to read, but my follow-up to that would be, well, one of those people in those texts knew better and didn't believe it, and that's Mark Meadows, because we know, I don't know if you're going to read his text, but like that's a very different case, right? He 100% did not believe any of this, and he's still going on Fox News after being deposed from his office, right? But like that part, he knew better. He did know.
He did know better. And there was even times in the Meadows text as we got closer, especially after January 6th, but as we got closer to January 6th, I could even see him having an issue, especially when we get to the Jenny Thomas texts. Once I get to those, I think you're going to be, a lot of people might be aware of the Jenny Thomas texts, but I do think with as many people that are on right now, I think we do have this ability maybe to dig a little bit deeper into why the Jenny Thomas texts were so dangerous, and how they mirror some of the things that you saw here, like Democrats are evil, the spiritual warfare component of all of this, which was the thing that me being raised Mormon, right? Me being raised very religious. I am very in tune with what an evangelical or fundamentalist view is of demons, spirits, warfare, and the fact that there are many Republicans who think Democrats somehow were spawned directly, from the bowels of the earth. And by the way, I've been called the tool of the Antichrist. So there you have it. So, and that's just with me utilizing data.
And Trump echoed that today when they were talking in front of the Republicans. He echoed that whole Democrats are evil again today.
Again,
on the tragiversary of the original January 6th. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, and I want to tell you, the fact that you would come in here and do this with me, I know there's some risk to sort of hashing what happened on January 6th and giving people the truth. But the fact that you would do it and what you do, I just appreciate that you would come on here and read the Marjorie Taylor Greene text. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for including me. And we Tara and I, we just had a live too, and we're talking about this. We have to keep shining a light because we cannot let them revise, rewrite, whitewash, stainwash the events of that day. We all saw it with our own eyes and ears. It was a dark day, and I'm never going to stop ringing that bell. So thank you for including me in this. Thank you for doing it.
You're so welcome. And thank you, ma'am. You are a patriot. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Joe. So we're done with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, this might go a little bit quicker than you guys might even think. I know, but I had to set the stage for this first 20, 25 minutes to make sure as we go into these other text messages that we're doing this. So right now I'm going to read the Ralph Norman text messages. And there's a reason I'm doing this. I have to be a little careful on some of these text messages. And after I'm done with Ralph Norman, I'm going to bring in another special guest, which I'm very excited because he was a man who I could not have done this without. So these are going to be quick. As I read them, though, I need everybody to pay attention. If you have questions, write them down because there could be a point where I can answer some of the more in-depth questions if we have some time. So we're going to start with Ralph Norman. Everybody know Ralph Norman, Congressman? I know Ralph very well. And actually, I know him and his wife, and we had good times with them. But that does not change the fact of what I'm about to read. On November 7th, 2020 at 2:39 p.m., Ralph Norman goes to Ralph Meadows. Guys, there was ever a time to stand with our leader who has strengthened our military, stood for the life of the unborn, supported Israel, built the wall, appointed conservative judges, etc. And we laid down and abandoned him just because the biased media has called the election. Quick side note, context, this is Fox News. Now is the time to fight and advocate for a recount in Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania. This is November 7th. What our delegation is doing in South Carolina, his delegation, I should have said he's from South Carolina, is gathering on the State House steps on Tuesday to advocate for standing with our president and other options that are at our disposal. For anyone willing to discuss our game plan, let me or anyone else know, and let's get on a conference call with concrete plans of action. I will go anywhere, anytime to help our cause. Bottom line, it's time we fight for the one person. This is all caps, by the way. Let me read this as an all caps should be read. Fight for the one person who has changed this country way too soon to give in now. I'm going to be bringing out some Marjorie Taylor Greene text to do something for you guys. This is where Norman to Mark Meadows. This is January 5th, 2021 at 10:06 p.m. 10:06 p.m., January 5th, 2021, the night before. Mark, I hear McCarthy is giving equal time to let those who are opposed to the challenge of the electoral votes, which is ludicrous. Trump needs to call Kevin. Now think about that line. Can I read that really quickly? And I'm not going to comment. Everybody needs to let this sink in. Mark, I hear McCarthy is giving equal time to let those who are opposed to the challenge of the electoral votes, which is ludicrous. Trump needs to call Kevin. So what my friend Ralph was worried about was that those who wanted to oppose the challenge of the electoral votes, to oppose alternate elector type theories, should not be given equal time. Okay. One of the reasons there's some complexities here is because when I have Ralph Norman on text messages, some of these text messages are in group chats. There's a group chat here with Tom Emmer, who is now the whip, Ralph Norman, Mark Meadows, and an activist that had the most text in the entire Meadows text messages. Here's a group chat, and all he wanted to do was talk about Virginia Representative Luria, who was not on the committee yet. If you guys remember, this is some crazy stuff. Elaine Luria was actually on the January 6th committee, and he linked a Fox News thing about Elaine Luria talking about the pipe bomber. And boy, how interesting that Elaine Luria, who I know, Virginia, 2nd District, and she's running again, believe it or not, I think it's great, against Jen Kiggins, was actually used by Ralph Norman about the pipe bomber. And my guess is this was actually the conspiracy theory that the pipe bomber was a Democrat. January 6, 2021, 5:09 p.m., another group text with another activist to Mark Meadows with Ralph Norman involved. These are the lies they will tell. And this is about Rep. Luria. Yes, it's Antifa. They're supporters. Terrible what's been and being done. Antifa. If you look at the time on this, January 6, 5:09 p.m., really the first talk about Antifa as a messaging strategy was in a way that made sense with the presidential team was Jason Miller, and I will get to that when I get to this text, which happened about an hour and a half before that. This is the one, January 17th, 6:05 p.m. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene's martial law text was January 17th at 6:45 p.m. Is everybody tracking? You heard JoJo from Jurors. Marjorie Taylor Greene, January 17th, 2021, was talking about martial law. And that should be in effect. 6:45 p.m. January 17th, same day, 40 minutes before 6:05 p.m., Ralph Norman to Mark Meadows. Mark, and seeing what's happening so quickly and reading about the Dominion lawsuits, attempting to stop any meaningful investigation, we are at a point of no return in saving our republic. Our last hope is invoking martial law. Martial law spelled like my cousin Marshall again. Think about that. Please urge the president to do so. We had members of Congress wanting to invoke martial law on fantasy and conspiracy theories, thinking it was Antifa and that Dominion voting, which won a $787 million lawsuit, one of them against Fox because they were lying about them. We had individuals wanting to invoke martial law, multiple members of Congress. I don't know, as being a congressional member, that looking at an election, that I think that we should have martial law. And there's some things that even get more and more. And the reason that I set it up this way is it gets more and more dire when it talks about these type of individual actions. With that, we are done with Ralph Norman. I want to bring in Hunter Walker. And if everybody knows who Hunter Walker is, that is my co-author. Hunter, how you doing, man? Can you hear me, buddy? Doug, Hunter, can you hear me?
Hey, Denver.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. I think, Doug, I think the only person so what we'll do, we're going to get you fixed up. Doug, we'll get Hunter fixed up on this. Can everybody else hear me? Doug, can you hear me? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I think let's go ahead. It might be on his end on audio for Hunter. And Doug, if you can get him there you go. So we're going to take Hunter off until we can fix that, because we got to go next to one of my favorite text message threads. I hope everybody's ready for this. Rick Perry. You're like, gosh, Denver's already through 2 so far. This is quick. It is. It is quick. So I got a good one coming up here, and this is the first one on Rick Perry, extracted text. Now, let's talk about Rick. Everybody knows who I would think. Rick is the former governor of Texas. Rick also said that these weren't his phone numbers, but Rick probably shouldn't have signed his text messages. So what we're going to go also, when we did the lookup on the numbers, it said governor of Texas. So let's get started. There's a group chat with multiple people. One of them was Sonny Perdue, Department of Agriculture. Ben Carson is on this. You guys didn't know this stuff, did you? Mark Meadows and Rich Perry and some other individuals. This was on November 4th, guys. Think about this. November 4th, right? 2020 at 2:08 p.m. So right after the election. Now, a lot of people heard about the alternate elector slate. So as we go into this, I hope this probably opens your eyes in a way. So I hope everybody's paying attention. Here is an aggressive strategy. Again, guys, November 4th, Rick Perry to Mark Meadows. Here's an aggressive strategy. Why can't the states of Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and other R-controlled states' houses declare this BS? Where conflicts, in parentheses, where conflicts in election not called that night. Now, I have to read these specifically, so some of this isn't the great. So here we go. And just send their own electors to vote and have it go to SCOTUS. The alternate elector theory that I first read in texts, now I knew that it happened beforehand, we had that evidence, was November 4th by Rick Perry. That's how early this was starting. By the way, if you have alternate electors that aren't actually real, that sounds a little cooey, doesn't it? A little bit like a coup, right? Okay. SCOTUS understands that the state legislature is the will of the people and rule that the electors are legal. Done. Federalist theory, precedent in history. What he's talking about is the states having every right to choose their electors despite the will of the voters. That's what he's talking about here. It's how Lincoln got into the presidency, I think. Sorry, I laughed. I apologize. Lesson learned by states that if you don't control your state and not haul this crooked shit and delays in voting, then this is the way votes will go. As approved by SCOTUS, I wonder if POTUS knows that this is about the electors. It could lead to some interesting horse trading as well. Guys, interesting horse trading. We're talking about negotiation tactics for Trump to win. What is he talking about with horse trading, with alternate electors? What are they doing? Is that horse trading by sending it directly to the House of Representatives to a vote? Yeah, and I'm going to link that a little bit later. So here we go. Next one. Interesting. That's from Ben Carson to Mark Meadows. He was on this thread. Anybody know that? Anyone? Yeah, that's why even after the investigations and things like that, I wish that more had been done on this, even though this was the baseline for a lot of the investigation. Rick Perry to Mark Meadows, 7:44 a.m. We have the data-driven program that can clearly show where the fraud was committed. This is the silver bullet. Pam Bondi has seen and agrees. November 7th, 2020. Guys didn't know about these texts. Not all of them, did you? Pam Bondi has seen and agrees, and it's signed Rick Perry with his phone number. I'm not going to say it. I could call him. November 7th, 2020, 12:27 p.m. POTUS line should be Rick Perry. He's back to Mark Meadows, guys. Oh, by the way, can I tell you some other people on here? George Sonny Perdue, Ben Carson on this thread. I know. Crazy, huh? POTUS line should be Biden says he's president. America will see what big data says. You're looking at big data, folks. The tweet says it all. Don't let the news cycle go another hour without saying it, in my opinion. This sets the stage for what we're about to prove. Everyone will wonder. Everything presented from now on should begin with big data shows us. Now you're going back to the cyber ninjas. Guys, I can give you this context. These are the these sort of faux investigations in Arizona and Pennsylvania and down in, up in Michigan. You guys have heard of a lot of this, but again, you need to look up these investigations. This is where you start seeing the big data cyber type of stuff where they want to do these investigations after, by the way, the election was free and fair. So from Ben Carson to Mark Meadows on the same thread, we will see what the evidence shows. From George Sonny Perdue to Mark Meadows, no quit. I hope you guys would know who these individuals are. It's cabinet members. Rick Perry to Mark Meadows on November 24th. Morgan, I can't say that name, even though I probably could get away with it. The next one, so I'm going to read a portion of it. A side benefit to what they're doing is lets thousands of TikTok and Twitter vote detectives push voter ballot house level directly into their Google My Maps. Okay, so what am I talking about here? So already they want to start with sort of this populist Twitter detective thing, right? Where they're actually populating where they see where they find bad votes, right? It's pretty insane, right? It's pretty insane. So Open Secrets, they wanted to use some other foundations. But what they're talking about, then he goes, the biggest, most respected data guy in Georgia went through this new platform, finished Sunday, and said, wow, we don't have any of this. The cheating can't continue in the Senate runoffs and in any future elections. So what they're saying is they're seeing cheating in some data that no data. We didn't even know where that data came from. We tried to find what they were talking about with these foundations. Of course, they signed it again with their phone numbers. Next text. This is real stuff that saves the republic. Part of what you will hear today, this is real stuff that saves the republic. I'm starting to think the 40,000 illegal votes in Georgia we found is more rock solid and unarguable than anything else we've ever seen. You guys remember Georgia and the found votes that Trump wanted Kemp to find. So 122,000 moved across county lines 30 days before the election and were no longer registered to vote under Georgia law. Absolutely unprovable. It's insane. I hope you guys understand the insanity of this. The Georgia Secretary of State had a serious notice on their page. If you moved and don't register to vote in your new county, you're not legal to vote. 82,000 followed the law, 40,000 broke the law. This is a clear violation of the equal protection due to the 82,000 and every other person not registered to vote 30 days before the Georgia election. As Georgia 2 Election Mind said, it's open shut case. It's an open shut case. Now this is Rick Perry, who forgot certain portions of the government. Rick Perry's done. And with that, I'm going to bring on, and I hope everybody got that Rick Perry was part of the strategy of the alternate elected theory, of the ridiculous lies about Georgia, wanted to have some group, weird populist voter thing that uploads into a map, a geospatial map, mind-blowing insanity. Let me bring in Hunter Walker. Hunter, come on in here, buddy. We're already done with 3 of these text messages. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Good, buddy. Now,
Today of all days.
it is good to see. What's that?
On today of all days, huh?
Today of all days, 5 years. Now, here's what's amazing, right? While I'm reading these text messages and while you're seeing the strategy that's actually unfolding, when we wrote the book together, Hunter, and me and you were going through some of the text messages and the incredible work that you've done on TPM with that. What was your when you first read them, with, the ones that have been released, when you first read them in context with the names attached, do you remember your first feeling of some of the stuff that you read? Some of your first feelings?
Totally. And if I may, let me just step back for a second, because I think it's an important context to setting this up for people. And I was actually just thinking as you were on with Joe before that, it's basically Jenny Thomas who introduced us, right? Because, my experience was essentially at the time I was a White House correspondent for Yahoo. As a White House reporter, and I think this is important to note, I was at the Capitol on January 6th. And why was I at the Capitol? Because I'd covered Trump's speech at the Ellipse, and when he called that crowd to march and sent them to the Capitol with his words, I went with them, right? And I don't think a lot of other White House reporters sort of left the bubble of where they were supposed to be that day and followed the action. And if you actually, look into, in sort of a hindsight way, the coverage that was generated, it was reporters who were actually House reporters who were on the Hill and kind of trapped in the building with the members who happened to be there. And then it was, reporters such as myself, or a lot of, the more investigative types who had read the chatter online, saw that this Stop the Steal movement was building, and kind of recognized that the story was literally marching onto the Capitol that day. So then, given the violence that I saw, I was just like, we cannot let go of this. We have to stay with this story. And I was at the time doing kind of my own independent research, really focused on telling the world about what I'd seen with my own eyes that day, which was that Trump called these people to the Capitol. And there was an entire movement and machinery that brought them there to Washington, that put the president on stage to deliver this order, and then they followed it. And from that moment through now, it has been extremely frustrating to me that we've almost had to say it, right? Because again, this really did play out in public for anyone who was looking. It's really undeniable that Trump gave the order and that there was a whole structure for this, right? So when I was digging into this, I really had focused, I was doing pieces ultimately for Rolling Stone, looking at sort of the bus tours and kind of the Stop the Steal players, and exposing through sort of talking to them, and they were all ratting on each other at this point because they were terrified.
They sure did. They turned on each other quicker, than dogs with peanut butters on their asses. You know what I mean?
There was a moment where it seemed like there might be consequences, and they were really afraid of this. And I was talking to all of them and basically trying to dial in on links between the White House and Republicans in Congress. And it was quickly apparent to me that there were those links. First off, for the very obvious reasons of there were scheduled events at January 6th at the Supreme Court and at the Capitol that had people like Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert participating. And then there was Trump on the stage calling these people with Mo Brooks. There was an official campaign infrastructure. We've talked about, the funding that went on with Trump's team to get that stage together. The buses around the country and local GOP's role in that, like we knew they were involved, but seeing that they were sort of trying to deny it and that the public wasn't getting it, I was trying to go one step further. And so I had started to see these indications of the organizers admitting to me, we talked to Republican members of Congress. We were planning with dozens of them. There were these calls. Mark Meadows was on the phone with people. So that was kind of my first indication, something's going on here, right? And in the course of this, I traveled out of state. There was this whole clandestine mission for Rolling Stone. And I got this text where one of the organizers, Kylie Kramer, who said she'd been on the phone with Meadows, who was indicating she was in touch with the White House, said, we are following POTUS's lead. And that was the best smoking gun I got on my own. And then I meet you, right? And I think we can tell the story of how this happened at this point. I was chasing this whole thing I'd put together that I still have a lot of questions about, and I know you do too, where Ginny Thomas was like leading these busloads of activists in Northern Virginia to, stand on the street with signs. And
they posted on Facebook, by the way, Hunter, which was incredible to me, right?
Yeah, I had basically put together through sort of OSINT that Ginny Thomas had been doing this months of kind of on the street activism with one member of Congress's family and other people in Northern Virginia. And they were part of the Stop the Steal movement. And I stopped just short of being able to prove that her whole group went down to the Capitol. We know she was in the VIP, but I had all this material and I was just calling anyone I could on the House committee to try to hear what y'all had and to try to share what I did. And you and I ended up connecting on the phone. I did another one of those. I drove down to this distillery and we started.
You tried to get me, man. You tried to get me.
I tried to get you to leak, man. And we ended up getting to know each other and I think working on something much bigger than any one story. but you over time, started as we worked on the book to show me what you guys had uncovered. And as someone who had been essentially looking for the smoking gun, it was a holy shit moment, because this was not hearsay of, motivated people ratting on each other. This was unquestionable indication that Meadows was involved in this plot, right? And that there was a link between these outside groups and organizers that I'd been dealing with. And as you just outlined, not only Mark Meadows, but members of Congress, members of the cabinet, and also what became apparent to me from the moment you started letting me in on this stuff, the official committee wasn't touching it, and they did a lot of great work, a ton of great work. But I think we can all agree that the investigation was so focused on these mid-level players. The prosecutions were certainly focused on, the rank and file who believed the lie. And I actually have some empathy for them because of that, and followed these orders and broke into the building. But these people who we could see in your text messages that you uncovered, they were the players, and no one was talking about it. So that's my feeling. That's a very long introduction to it. I apologize.
Well, it's fantastic. And because of you talking about Jenny Thomas, and I want people to know about this really quickly, that it was because of Hunter's questions that I called him to help me after I was out of the committee. I mean, that was really what it came down to, is Hunter did try to, I'm usually a tough nut to crack, right? And Hunter came all the way to the distiller. I'm like, dude, we got to wait. I can't do this right now. And, but it was because of Hunter and how active he was that I used him. So I'm going to skip line here because you mentioned Jenny Thomas. How about we read some Jenny Thomas text messages? I'm going to bring on Tara Setmeyer. Come on, Tara. Come on in. Hey.
Greetings and salutations.
How you doing? How you doing? So, this is going to be a little bit nutty, with the interjections and stuff like that. And what Hunter's talking about is there was so much other phone data, bizarre numbering systems that look like burners or certain types of apps, people who said they were using burners, and certain data that I found in phone metadata that was absolutely insane, that we just didn't have the resources to go after. But on the level, at the beginning of it, I'm like, that's a burner. So we had just so many things happening, even within the family and in the White House, when we got some of these phone records. So we're going to go right into Jenny Thomas, everybody. I hope everybody got a little break. They got to hear me and Hunter talk about this incredible thing. Hunter, I want you to stay on while this is happening, if you want. You don't have to. I know that you're also busy. Everybody's so busy and joining us today. But Tara, if they don't know you, the Seneca Project, the one, right? Tara, my good friend, she said she would read Jenny Thomas today. These are not easy to read. I just want to warn people that it's very difficult because there's some lines, there's some weird copy pastes. There's YouTube links that I can explain, which talks about some of the craziest conspiracy theories. And those links have been disabled some time ago. Me and Hunter actually got to see some of those links. And I will tell you, it'll drive you to drinking if you didn't drink beforehand. So we're going to start. And if you want to get right into it, Tara, we're going to start on November 5th, 2020. Now, do you want me to do the dates, Tara? Would you like to do the dates to, from, and stuff like that?
I think it's best if you do the dates to tee up each one. And then I'll
tee up each one and you can read. Here we go.
Yeah.
And Hunter, after the text, if you want to say something very quickly, you're more than welcome. Okay. So here we go. Now this starts early, guys. This is November 5th, 2020, at 11. Look at what I have to do, guys. I apologize. At 11:55 p.m. Right. So this is incoming. So this is Jenny Thomas to Mark Meadows, and go.
I hope this is true. Never heard anything like this before, or even a hint of it. Possible? Trump. Wait, hold on. Oh, Trump sting with CIA director Steve. Is it Pieczenik? The biggest election story in history. QFS. Blockchain QFS, 7-minute video.
You got to look up QFS blockchain, everybody. This is about ballots that President Trump told the National Guard to put on there that had special coding within the ballots so you could tell what are fake ballots and real ballots. When I talk insanity, this is total insanity. And it's so incredible that these are some of the conspiracy theories that people actually followed. And if you have people that tell you this was a Fed surrection or they're using gobbledygook nonsense, like this was an inside job, if there was any inside job, it was President Trump radicalizing people based on the credulity of individuals like Jenny Thomas, who happens to be the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So I'll let you continue. That's why this is so nuts, is to give context on why my mind exploded the first time I read these, and I did have to drink a couple snorts of bourbon. So go. Sorry about that.
Believe me, I wish I had some bourbon now. And I'm glad you gave people that context. And also just the irony of you doing this right now, Denver. I just want to say thank you to you and to Hunter for writing that book, but also doing this right now. Right now, we are approaching the time frame when the first windows of the Capitol were broken. At 1 o'clock 5 years ago is when the crowd began to overrun the police.
If I remember correctly,
right? By 2:11 is when the first windows were broken, and all of us were watching this live. I know I was in absolute horror. We were watching it build up. But then when those first windows broke and we saw those people start to pour in, there was just such a feeling of, it felt like a terrorist attack. You know, it was a domestic terrorist attack on our Capitol that day. And watching our brave Capitol police officers and Metro PD, because at first it was just the Capitol police officers, and then they had to call in reinforcements, and just watching that whole thing unfold right now as we are doing this live, it's surreal. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And I think it's so important that people, that the history of this is not whitewashed, that if you are out there and people are retweeting not only this live stream, but the actual video footage of what we saw, because these idiots were proud of what they were doing. They were proud. They were out there, taping it because they thought they were, storming the Bastille, for God's sakes. Meanwhile, they were literally involved in a violent insurrection to overturn a free and fair election, attacking our Capitol. And for the trolls out here who are trying to tell us that, we're trying to make this like it was 9/11 and how it's disrespectful to 9/11. It was the closest thing to 9/11 in recent history that we have seen as an attack, direct attack on our democracy in this country. So they can all kiss my ass if they have a problem with that, because they can't face the truth about it. And the fact that I'm going to continue to read text messages from the wife of a Supreme Court justice who is a still sitting Supreme Court justice right now, and nothing ever happened to her or to him with the involvement that Ginny Thomas had, is still something that I think is a travesty of justice. So at least we can keep the facts and the truth out there by doing this, which is what we're about to continue to do right now. Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, was texting this. The biggest election story in history, QFS blockchain 7-minute video. Dr. Steve, what's his name? Pachenik info has very good intel contacts through 5 November interview. Then there's another link that you talked about broken up. The QFS blockchain watermarked ballots in over 12 states have been part of a huge Trump and military white hat sting operation in 12 key battleground states where 20,000+ National Guard were deployed. Biden crime family and ballot fraud co-conspirators, elected officials, bureaucrats, social media censorship mongers, fake stream media reporters, etc., are being arrested and detained for ballot fraud right now and over coming days, and will be living in barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition.
Comment, Hunter. Tara, comments.
Just remember what day this was. This was what, a day or two after the election?
November 5th, 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I think two things to underscore, and just to make sure people are understanding, is first off, those dates are really important, because this movement to subvert the election politically, violently, began really even before the ballots were cast. Right. I mean, we covered in the book how Roger Stone basically laid the groundwork for Stop the Steal in the 2016 campaign, when he actually thought Trump might lose. They just mothballed it. And they immediately sprung it into action right after 2020. And frankly, I think they've got it mothballed and ready to go again for 2028 if they need.
I don't know if you saw earlier today, but Trump's unhinged press conference or his meeting with the Republicans, he suggested canceling the elections.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have a bunch of these election deniers who currently work in the Department of Homeland Security in areas that would impact the elections, the administering of elections. So I have no doubt in my mind that they're trying to cook something up, not only for the midterms, but for 2028. So that's why we have to remain vigilant and understand that this didn't go away. These people weren't vanquished. They're back in power. So it's even more important now than ever that people pay attention to who these people are and that
Pay
we expose
attention,
it.
because
Pay attention.
it's when you have a fantasy baseline instead of a facts baseline for policy or for elections, it gets dangerous, incredibly dangerous, because when you have no acceptable way to prove truth to those who ignore facts and data, that's when violence happens also, because belief systems overwhelm any type of conservative behavior. When I say conservative, I'm not talking about right or left, but I'm talking about behavior that's from diligence and practicality. So, all right,
one thing just to throw in there, because I think it's really important for people to understand this, and I know they don't get a chance to see this information a lot because it hasn't been presented outside of this type of forum. When you talk about fantasy-based realities, when we see Ginny Thomas, texting about QFS blockchain or whatever, as someone who's gone through this and in my work with you and in my work at TPM, attempted to use archives to kind of recreate and understand what these people were actually talking about. One of the most alarming things is that you have, as Tara pointed out, the wife of a Supreme Court justice, members of cabinet, members of Congress, and they're sharing information with no basic literacy or hygiene whatsoever. I mean, half this stuff they're throwing out there was just utter nonsense from YouTube, from foreign sites. When she says 7-minute video, that's exactly what it is. It is just a completely random 7-minute video. And these people were totally credulous. When it fit their narrative and when it fit their partisan end, they were ready to go down that rabbit hole. And I think the problem is that we've lost people like John McCain, right? Who when someone would say an insane Muslim conspiracy theory about Barack Obama, he would stop them and check it, even if it didn't fit his interests. Trump is gleefully throwing people down the rabbit hole at the same time that we have AI and all of this stuff that has made reality more confusing. And this is showing that we just don't have any gatekeepers or people who even understand what they're looking at online.
Unfortunately,
stated.
That's right. And particularly the boomers. I bust my parents' chops all the time. My mom, that's a boomer thing, because they don't know. And AI has gotten so much more sophisticated now with deep fakes and our foreign adversaries like Russia and China and Iran. They know what the pain points are culturally for us. They know what to recreate. They know. We found out a couple months ago about all of these fake bot accounts that are from foreign bot farms that are on Twitter that are, ready to go when they need to be inundated into the algorithm with bullshit about stuff. Like the propaganda is crazy. So this is 5 years ago, and now it's 10 times worse now, which again goes back to my original point that we have to pay attention and be more diligent and be uncompromising when it comes to the truth and the facts and what reality is. We have to, because they are, and this is only going to get worse because Ginny Thomas is a complete lunatic.
Well,
okay, next.
You guys just set the stage for the next text, by the way, when you talk about fantasy-based realities. Wait till you see this next text. It's a quick one, but it's a good one.
What's the date?
The date is November 6th, 2020, 10:49 a.m. And this is from Ginny Thomas to Mark Meadows.
This is before Biden was called as the winner. Do not concede. It takes time for the army who is gathering for his back.
So now you have a baseline of belief that is talking about almost, is it a spiritual army? Probably. But now you're talking about this weird sort of pushback or revolution based on things that are absolutely insane. Next text, November 20th, 2020, 12:23 p.m. This is again from Ginny to Mark Meadows. And here we go.
Mark, I wanted to text you and tell you for days you are in my prayers.
Stop
I
quick.
Yep.
Don't say the name of the person in that next sentence.
Okay.
I just want to really quickly just say, I hear from a person.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
I hear from so and so. You are working through. Listen to Rush, Mark Stein, Bongino, Cleta, and know the grassroots wants truth to prevail over lies. There's a lot of exclamation points and question marks. Help this great president stand firm. Mark, the left tastes their power. You are the leader with him who is standing for America's constitutional governance at the precipice. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history. Question marks.
That's it. So this is the Supreme Court Justice's wife. And I think when we first read this, well, I was the first one to read this in context and of all the texts, as you guys know. And this is when I started to get quite frightened about the belief systems that were driving the January 6th conspiracy theories. And we look at the violence that happened on January 6th, you can see where it's rationalized to this sort of warfare, spiritual type of thing that was going on based on complete fabrications, on things that aren't even close to being true. So Mark answers Virginia, Jenny, and goes, I will stand firm. This is Mark Meadows to Jenny Thomas. I will stand firm. We will fight until there is no fight left. Our country is too precious to give up on. Thanks for all you do. And then Jenny, on November 10th, 2020, responds back to Mark saying,
tearing up and praying for all you guys. So proud to know you.
There you go. Now we're rocking and rolling, right? So now we have QFS blockchain. I didn't know 20,000 people were arrested, or 20,000 National Guard were arresting people. They're at Gitmo already. There looks like they're going to face military tribunals, which is pretty amazing. She says the army is gathering at their back, and they also know that Biden and the left are committing the greatest heist in history. And Mark Meadows goes, we will fight till there's no fight left. If you guys realize all this is based on fantasy. Then she says, tearing up and praying for you guys, so proud to know you. Then on November 10th, 2020 at 10:07 p.m., it's late, getting late. What does she say next, Tara?
Van Jones spins interestingly, but shows us the balls being juggled too. House and Senate guys are pathetic too. Only 4 GOP House members seen out in street rallies with the grassroots. Gomert, Jordan, Gosar, and Roy. Where the heck are all those who benefited by President's coattails? Watch this though, if you haven't already. There's another is a clip for Van Jones on CNN. It is such a messaging war game, information warfare being played to keep the truth from coming out. A heist.
Okay.
Everything they accuse us of, they're doing. It's crazy.
Information warfare. Hunter. Tara's just right there. Hunter, what is your take when you have somebody like Jenny Thomas saying is conducting information warfare?
I mean, she's just living in a completely alternate reality. You know, as we were saying before, she's just drowning in this, completely made up internet, basically sci-fi with dystopian military tribunals and barges off Gitmo. I think also, you're seeing this sort of stew of Christian nationalism and great replacement ideology that is coming out of that internet extremism, and that is giving people this permission structure to worship Trump and to, express violence and hatred towards others. And one thing I found when I was doing my sort of open source on Jenny Thomas is that one of her closest friends that she was spending all this time with had what I can only describe in their house as a shrine to Robert E. Lee.
Oh my God.
And, to me, these texts, it's just a sign that like these people are not living in the America that we all thought we were, or that the rest of us are. And specifically in one of those moments, she brings up the Constitution. I don't think she has the same notion of constitutionality that
Clearly
most legal scholars do. And that's really alarming, as Tara pointed out so many times, coming from the wife of a Supreme Court justice. So I'm going to let you guys read the rest of this insane Jenny oeuvre. And to paraphrase her for a moment, let me just say I'm tearing up and I'm so proud of her. Later,
Well,
guys.
I tell you, we love later, my friend. So up until this point, I was very concerned, but I wasn't going over into where I wanted to subpoena people. But it was the next text messages where I started thinking there could be real issues. And I just want to set this up and tee this up for individuals as we're going through these text messages. Now, there is one thing, when you're talking about when you're doing investigations and people are like, well, this just shows weird behavior, Tara. The thing is that if weird behavior is translated to policy or action, that's when that weird behavior can become criminal.
Correct.
And so, right. I mean, listen, we might have weird cuisine choices, but we're not all Jeffrey Dahmer, right? so on the next one, we're going to go into where I started to think that things, and I'm going to explain to it. So the next text, now we're at November 13th, 2020 at 6:39 a.m. So this is again from Jenny to Mark Meadows.
Okay.
Start with just
Yeah.
forwarded.
Yep. Just forwarded to your email, an email I sent Jared this morning, assuming
Jared
that's
Kushner.
Sydney Powell has entered
Sydney
the
Powell.
chat. She has entered the chat. Sydney Powell, an improved coordination now will help the cavalry come and fraud exposed and America saved. Don't let her and your assets be marginalized. Instead, help her be the lead and the face.
Okay. Now I have the Supreme Court Justice wife talking directly to the White House and Jared Kushner. I also have her as a supporter of Sydney Powell and asking Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, to make her the lead in the face. So now I'm starting to say, wait a second. So we have a Supreme Court Justice wife interacting directly with Jared Kushner. That starts to talk to multiple branches of government being involved. And that's one of the things that, I pointed out in my book, that even if you're not looking at criminal behavior, you're looking at radicalizing behavior from people of real import in the Republican Party. I also made the argument at the time, Tara, the most powerful person in the Republican Party is not Donald Trump, it's Clarence Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
So
who did not recuse himself, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. Now it gets a little down. So the next one's really interesting. This is a copy paste. Now this is where I got really interesting. Virginia Thomas copy and paste a text of hers from Connie Hare. Now people are like, well, who's Connie Hare? Connie Hare is the chief of staff to Louis Gohmert, Congress. Now I have a Supreme Court justice's wife interacting with the White House and Congress for policy and direction. So, and this was maybe up there as the most disturbing text sent from Jenny Thomas's account from Connie Hare, and a copy paste from her to Mark Meadows.
What's the date on this?
November 14th, 2020.
So we're 1 week after President Biden was declared the official winner.
1 week.
So 1 week. And this is before the electors certify, which was in December. So they're still, trying to manipulate. They're still, the fake electors thing is rocking and rolling here. The most important thing you can realize right now is that there are no rules in war. You destroy your enemy's ability to fight. This is what's happening right now. This war is psychological. PSYOP. It's what I did in the military. They are using every weapon they have to try to make us quit, to give up on our system of government and processes. They try to break our will to fight through demoralization, discouragement, division, chaos, and gaslighting. It is fake, fraud, and if people would take a deep breath and look at things through the filter we see this through and win. The Constitution is on our side, and it's worth fighting for. I believe in it. Our founders and even those facing Omaha Beach have done much more than we have since Election Day. I would suggest we all think in those terms, because if we don't, and we allow this massive fraud to stand, we've lost our country anyway. Connie Hare, November 13th.
Signed it. So now I'm looking at this going, okay, I got organization. Now, a lot of people say, well, she's allowed to do anything she wants. She's a civilian. Well, not really. And it gets down towards the end. You're going to see very quickly, right, where I start to get a little bit even more concerned based on what I know about what she refers to her husband as and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about this, they're looking at this as war footing right now, again, based on
Yep.
complete fantasy. And
Yep.
this is what you're going to get with all these text messages is them trying to figure out what's going on. And you've already seen the alternate elector theories. You've already seen Antifa stealing things. Now you're seeing QFS blockchain. You're seeing the National Guard deployed. You're seeing they're putting people in Gitmo. There's special markings on all the ballots. You're looking at all the different conspiracy theories that they're trying to make stick because the election wasn't stolen. So, and again, I
And
know this seems
comparing it to World War II, which is,
Omaha
you know,
Beach.
I mean, the Omaha Beach comparison is so offensive to, you know, those of us and people who understand history and know the importance of those brave actions and, you know, the significance in history. To compare what they're doing to this, again, it shows you the mindset. These people are way out there.
It's frightening, and as everybody knows, you know, Jenny did have issues with cult behavior before when she was a member of LifeSpring.
Yes.
She certainly has some proclivities to believe things that might not be true. And
Is that the same
again,
cult that Amy Coney Barrett was in?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
Oh, she
No,
was in a
that's
different one.
That's different. Yeah, yeah. Let's not get our cults confused, Tara. You know. But what we're looking at there when you talk about this and LifeSpring, if people want to look at a deep dive on that, go look up Dr. Stephen Hassan and his report about LifeSpring and Jenny Thomas, and you can look that up.
And there's video, I think, too, of her, right?
Video of her, right? And it looked
Yeah.
like she had come out of it. And you know, again, it's very difficult for me because I have so many people that I know that are very religious or believe certain things. You automatically want to be completely judgmental, or you want to say it is crazy, it is insane, it is loop-de-loop. But the issue is too is that she believes this. This is not fake.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of the things that bothers me is not criminal activity. It's those in a position of power with that type of access pushing things so insane that it could radicalize others. So
Which it did, clearly. Look at what, I
of
mean,
course,
January 6th
clearly.
was the culmination of that.
It was a culmination of
Mhm.
complete radicalization and things that are literally untrue. And you know, when people try to say, hey, you know, it was just a day that got out of hand, guys, it's all here.
Yeah.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This was the beginning of the investigation. This was the blueprint for everything that happened. And by the way, we don't even have all the text because Mark wouldn't send some of the other stuff.
Mhm.
So there you go.
Wasn't he held
okay,
in contempt for that?
No.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
right.
let's go to, yeah, it wasn't much of a fight.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one, ma'am.
All
This
right.
is November 19th, 2020.
Mark, don't want to wake you. The intense pressures you and our president are now experiencing are more intense than anything experienced, but I only felt a fraction of it in 1991. Okay, she's comparing this to her husband's Anita Hill testimony
Correct.
and
Well done.
confirmation hearings. Which, by the way, I believe Anita Hill, and if anyone ever wants to dive deeper into that whole thing, the slow burn season about Clarence Thomas's life is well worth the listen. It puts so much of this into context. Oh my God. And also one other thing about Ginny Thomas and that, years later, remember, she called Anita Hill in like
Sure.
an unhinged weirdo message, left messages on her voicemail years later. So, you know, Ginny Thomas has been cuckoo for a long time. All right. At stake, truth, evidence, facts, and America. Or will lies win? I know you all are feeling an unbelievable negative intensity if you drink in media or weak people messages. Look at a calendar and set out the plan for getting truth, evidence, out by dates, certain, wait, hold on. Dates certain. She doesn't write like a coherent person, by the way.
Evidence out by date certain, right?
Yeah, I'm reading these the way they're and you can't even see the punctuation. I don't know what it is with these magazines, the weirdo punctuation.
Well, no, it's so sometimes there's copy paste errors when they go from an original data set and they copy paste it into Excel.
Okay.
It'll replace contractions or spaces with certain types of symbols.
But I mean, not the symbols, like the weird capitalizations and
yeah,
the,
that's real.
It's all
yeah.
just so weird. I don't know what
real.
it is with them. Anyway, sounds like Sydney and her team are getting inundated with evidence of fraud. Make a plan. Release the Kraken and save us from the left taking America down. Was that the first release the Kraken?
No, Kraken was out there. I think I don't know.
I mean,
always
Sidney
sounds
Powell
like a
must have said
rum
it by
commercial
then.
to me.
Yeah, well, I
It
mean,
always
release
sounds
the
like a rum
Kraken.
commercial.
The video of Sidney Powell saying that is just, I mean, that's when you really go like, oh my God, these people are serious. These are not serious people. Okay. Release the Kraken and save us from the left taking America down. Suggestion. You need to buck up your team on the inside. Mark. The lower level insiders are scared, fearful, or sending out signals of hopelessness versus an awareness of the existential threat to America right now. You can buck them up, strengthen their spirits. Monica Crowley may have a sense of this from her Nixon days. Northern Virginia deplorables and others seem to be planning pop-up spontaneous sign wavings this morning for Stop the Steal.
She's a member of the
The Northern Virginia deplorables.
She's a
They
member.
proudly embrace that. The Northern Virginia deplorables and others seem to be planning pop-up spontaneous sign wavings this AM for Stop the Steal. Help the communicators share these kinds of messages. Video below. As you guys garner truth and evidence. Americans are praying for you all. Feel that and be the leaders God has made you into for this time. Ginny, Ginny. She signed it. And then
Jenny.
This is still her, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys fold. The evil, if you guys fold, the evil just moves fast down underneath you all. Lots of intensifying threats coming to ACB and others. So
Amy
Coney Barrett. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So honor and respect you for helping this amazing president stand for all of us. This is spiritual warfare, as you must feel, Mark. It is about America continuing and this lonely leader and man.
Tell you it's sad. And then Mark Meadows goes, thanks so much. She goes, loved, thanks so much. And then she's watching Rudy's speech, November 19th, 2020. And what does she say on that? She goes,
tears are flowing at what Rudy is doing right now! Exclamation points.
Yes. And then Mark Meadows goes, glad to help. And then she emphasized glad to help. And then she goes on November 19th.
Same day?
Yep, same day.
Yeah. Whoa, heroes.
And then she says 3 days later. Now, November 22nd. So now things are starting to get a little crazy with Meadows because he's starting to see that Sidney Powell maybe isn't all there. Go watch this text because this changes. It's just fascinating. The switch you see here on November 22nd.
Yes. This is just before I read this. Is this when Sidney Powell was going on TV talking about Hugo Chavez and Italian satellites and all of that? Okay.
Yes.
Just for context. Trying to understand the Sidney Powell distancing. She doesn't have
now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. You're exactly right because Mark Meadows goes after that. He goes, she doesn't have anything, or at least she won't share it if she does. So at that point, you're seeing Mark Meadows starting to distance themselves from Sidney Powell. This is around November 22nd. This should align with people what they see in the news. And then Jenny goes on November 22nd.
Wow.
So, and I'm going to let you say November 24th. Now you know things are getting crazy. We had this video. Jenny sends a actual video to Mark Meadows from Parler, the far right site, Nazi site. And then I'm going to start at November 24th. We're going to go through these because it's pretty much the same thing. It's really hard at this point. Now it's just anger, as we're going through. So what I want you to do from November, on the day of November 24th, if you can read, we can go back and forth. So this is me and you now, Jenny. This is Mark.
All right.
So you're going to start with if you cave to the elites, and then we're going to go back and forth.
Got it. If you all cave to the elites, you have to know what many of your 73 million feel like when Glenn is expressing included. That's Glenn Beck. I think I'm done with politics, and I don't think I'm alone, Mark.
I don't know what you mean by caving to elites.
Sorry, my phone was across a few rooms. I can't see Americans swallowing the obvious fraud, just going one more thing with no freaking consequences. The whole coup, and now this? We just caved to people who want Biden to be anointed? Many of us can't continue the GOP charade.
It's changing them. I didn't view the clip. What is it about?
It's just him being fed up at there never being bring consequences all to all the what? Let me start again. It's just him being fed up at there never bring consequences to all the hard work of showing progressive or D lies.
You're preaching to the choir. Very demoralizing.
The fracturing now, the stabbing in the back of anyone daring to still say there seemed to be fraud, all the R's congratulating Biden. You're his loyalists can't take this. It's so evil. Thank you for being in my choir then too. If this doesn't turn, I'm literally done with politics. And that's all I have done since my 20s. People hate the GOP, or it's growing.
Mark Meadows to Jenny to answer. This is a fight of good versus evil. Evil always looks like the victor until the King of Kings triumphs. Do not grow weary in well doing. The fight continues. I have staked my career on it. Well, at least my time in DC on it. Now, that last sentence, I don't know if it's a joke,
I know.
if he's being glib. Well, after saying the King of Kings is fighting, I've staked my career on it. This incredible good against evil. And then he goes, well, at least my time in DC on it. When I first read this, I actually laughed out loud. I like,
yeah.
Is Mark just telling a joke? It
Right.
was pretty interesting. Okay, then the last of them, the last two, I'll let you read them. And you know what? I think you should read them, even though it's November 24th and January 10th. I've read these so many times. You know what? Read the next one. I want to explain it really quickly.
Yep.
And then, yes, go ahead.
Yep. So the first one, the second to last one is what's the date?
November 24th.
And then the last one is January 10th. So it's
January 10th.
January 6th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Needed that. This plus a conversation with my best friend just now. Who could that be?
Best friend is Clarence Thomas.
We all know this. I will try to keep holding on. America is worth it. But this rotten GOP, just like Fox and the NFL, they are whistling past the graveyard if they think proceeding independent of DJT will work out. America has been educated and people want real leaders, not fake ones. If globalists win and there is no truth either, I don't get the next play.
There is. So best friend was Clarence Thomas. I pointed that out as soon as I had these text messages, but it was, not, when she did have her interview, she did admit that. I don't get the next play. And I just want to say this really quick before the last one, and then we're going to take a bit of a break, let people, get some water. I'm going to sit here for everybody and maybe a couple questions that Doug wants to pop up. I had 6 more. I think this has to be part 1. I think I got to do a part 2 next week because I don't want to, but there's so much good stuff here and there's so much intertwined things. That's why I wanted to make sure that I got to some of this. But you have to understand, guys, if globalists win and there is no truth either, quote from Jenny Thomas, what is the truth if she believes the truth is QSF blockchain? Or watermark ballots. I don't know how to get around that. And I think that's why we have to continue hammering with truth and facts. And people who don't or have faulty beliefs about January 6th, I think the initial conversation shouldn't be anger. It should be asking them, 3 questions. What's your source? Data are you using? And why did you come to that conclusion? And I think that's a good way to start conversations. And if people talk about the Fedsurrection or Ray-Epps or all these conspiracy theories, just go back. What's your source for that? Because that's been unproven, right? And there's people like Denver Riggleman who saw all the phone records for these individuals, right? And Ray Epps wasn't in contact with any law enforcement, and right in the phone that he had, right? He was mad at his wife was going to be mad at him. That's why he got home, right? I mean, it's just ludicrous, right? That people believe these things, but that's how they make their money. These are grifters, liars, or the credulous, or people who actually believe figures in authority who are willing to lie to them. So after January 6th, there is something that's redeeming. And, and I think when you read the last text from Jenny Thomas, it's pretty interesting. And so on January 10th, this is 4 days after January 6th at 5:06 a.m., Jenny sends this to Mark Meadows.
At 5:06 a.m., are these people vampires? They never sleep. Like,
Yeah.
what? It's so weird. I still adamantly The
It's
president, yeah, the president and you. Oh, is that one of those weird, like, it shouldn't
Yeah,
be
it's a
there,
copy
question mark?
paste thing error
Okay.
that the Mark Meadows team put over to the actual text. We didn't want to change anything in the text messages to make sure it was exactly correct from what Mark Meadows' lawyer sent us.
I still adamantly, the president and you, friend, we are living through what feels like the end of America. Most of us are disgusted with the VP and are in a listening mode to see where to fight with our teams. Those who attack the Capitol are not representative of our great teams of patriots for DJT. Amazing times. The end of liberty?
The end of liberty. So there's two things here that's interesting. First of all, she was disgusted with Pence for doing the right thing,
Yep.
but she did express that violence was not. So the issue with this, and what I want to tell people, is that I don't believe that sometimes those who have these beliefs and push them out so hard, you got to remember that Jenny Thomas also sent emails to Arizona asking him to overturn the election. This is not just the text messages from Jenny Thomas. There's much, much more. So I guess I want to tell people as we go into this quick break, if people want to ask some questions after this reading, and we've been reading for an hour and a half straight with 4 individuals. Can you imagine if I tried all 2,319 text messages today? Wouldn't that have been fun? I think I want people to realize, as we're doing this part 1, that January 6th was a day that had organized violence based on radicalization. We know that from the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. And we also know that there were people very high up in the administration, all the way to the chief of staff, that were listening to and reacting to things that were obviously untrue, and multiple types of conspiracy theories that were being sort of evolved in real time from people all over the country that had access to Mark Meadows. And I think that's why when you read them, when you actually get into these things, and when you have people who have done counterterrorism investigations like myself, it's very difficult for me not to get angry sometimes when you see people on the air trying to diminish what happened on January 6th. Listen, I understand, I do, that you have a belief system that you think has somehow been cut off because you lost. I do. You feel like there's no way you could have won when everybody around you thinks the same way you do. And I think that's the thing, right? Tara, there's so many people in echo chambers, physically and digitally, that they don't understand that there's 340 million people in the United States and not everybody thinks the way you do. And also that spirits and vapors do not take the place of facts and data. Beliefs are not facts. They can be if you prove it, but you have to prove it. Extraordinary claims and extraordinary evidence, as Carl Sagan said. And I'm going to maybe read 2 more people because I think people want to hear from Don Jr.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, I think people want to hear that, but I do want to take some questions. And I also think people might want to hear from Sean Hannity. Now, I wanted to read Scott Perry and Chip Roy also. And Scott Perry, the reason I wanted to read Scott Perry, because he talked about them going into encrypted apps. Remember Ralph Norman, guys, at the beginning, and Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about martial law and the encrypted apps. Scott Perry, I think, has some of and I might just do Scott Perry by himself because there's so many of them. I also want to do Jason Miller. You guys are like, oh my God, Jason Miller. Jason Miller is the one who came up with the messaging on Antifa at about 3:40 to 3:45 p.m. As you guys remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene at 3:52 p.m. texted it was Antifa. Coordinated messaging. And you guys are like, Denver, how do you know that? Because Jason Miller's text message was Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino, right? All that. So, but it's so many text messages to get through there. But I want people to know that everything that everybody was doing, there was a coordinated messaging behind that where they were trying to push that out, which I talked about Matt Gaetz talking about Antifa in the crowd, which was absolute bullshit.
Dan, I just want to
go ahead.
I don't know if you saw this, because this is, as you're doing this and as we're reading, talking about reality versus fantasy and how we've repeated today that we cannot let these bastards whitewash history.
Yes.
This is the statement put up on the official whitehouse.gov account about today. I'm just going to read it. I don't know if you've seen this.
I haven't seen it. Ma'am, you know what I've been doing. I've been preparing for this,
This is what they put today. The Democrats masterfully reversed reality after January 6th, branding peaceful patriotic protesters as insurrectionists and framing the event as a violent coup attempt orchestrated by Trump, despite no evidence of armed rebellion or intent to overthrow the government. In truth, it was the Democrats who staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud ridden election, ignoring widespread irregularities, and weaponizing federal agencies to hunt down dissenters, all while Pelosi's own security lapses invited the chaos they later exploited to seize and consolidate power. This gaslighting narrative allowed them to persecute innocent Americans, silence opposition, and distract from their own role in undermining democracy.
So everything in that's a lie. Every single thing in that is a lie. I can prove it. I've proved it. Jack Smith's proved it. The J6 committee, these prove it. It's absolutely true. We know the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, what they did. We had their comms too. This exactly. Somebody just put up, and I haven't looked at any comments because I've been in. It's double speak.
Yep.
But it's also, nobody's going to debate me on this. Nobody's going to debate the real folks who know what's going on. They're absolute cowards. But the thing is, they have the bully pulpit, and belief has overwhelmed facts. And if you don't have a baseline of truth, revisionist history is what happens. You try to, and it's not just whitewashing, guys. It's actually turning the whole tables of history and what happened that day. So here I am. It's January 6th. I'm here 5 years later. I saw the data. I saw the phone calls, right? I got that, right? And what people need to do is to push back on this narrative from a government that's so wrapped up in fantasy and making their leader happy that they forget that the citizens need to know what facts and truth are.
That's right. Well, glad to fight alongside you, my friend. And we honor all of those police officers and all of those who put their lives in harm's way to protect people and to protect a lot of these people who are putting out these lies today. They did it for something bigger, which is our democracy and our freedoms here. And that's why I know I'm in this fight, Den. I know for you, it's very personal to us that we do believe that our country is worth fighting for, and we just can't let them win. We cannot let them win. We have to push back against things like this, and it starts with doing things like this and resting on truth and facts and reality. So thank you for letting me be a part of it, my dear, and I will.
Thanks, Tara.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks. And we got
Thanks,
more
everybody.
coming. All right. Thank you. All right. So everybody, do you need a drink? You might. I know that's been pretty disturbing. When you hear this, when you hear the context, the proof, and what's happening. The thing that you have to see is, do you believe what I'm saying based on the data that we saw? And what are your sources? What are my sources? Where did I get the data, right? And why did I come up with the conclusions that I came up with? It's because they said it. Sometimes, it's pretty hard to push back against things that people said or say, I was just making things up. I was having fun. Radicalizing people really isn't all about that. If you think about that day on the Capitol, every single person there that day was there for the wrong reason. Regardless if they went in the Capitol or not, they were led down a awful path. So I'm going to give people a chance to get a quick drink. Of course, I'm not going to leave. You guys can sit here and talk with me. I hope that you have something. I already went through, I think, a liter of water. While we're doing this, I might have to go get more of it. I don't have an assistant handy. I didn't think my voice would start to get gravelly, this. But if there's any questions, Doug, that you want to pop up very quickly or something you want me to address. So if you think about some of the text message threads I have, Chip Roy, 60 plus text messages. I have a Jim Jordan, Sean Hannity compilation, which is quite wonderful that I went through and did. Jason Miller is so much. I have so much on Jason Miller, but when you're talking about Jason Miller, and I'm sorry, I know these text messages so well. It's just part of the thing. So I'm going to go really quickly to January 6th at 3:45 p.m. As everybody's getting a drink, just have some fun. So Jason Miller at 3:45 p.m. is on group text with Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino. Everybody knows Dan Scavino, White House Comms. This was at 3:45 p.m. Now, again, I want to remind everybody that around 3:50, 3:52 is when Marjorie Taylor Greene starts saying it must be Antifa. Here's the ideas made up. Ready? Call me crazy, but ideas for 2 tweets from POTUS. This is Jason Miller to Trump's team. Bad apples, likely Antifa or other crazed leftists, infiltrated today's peaceful protest over the fraudulent vote count. Violence is never acceptable. MAGA supporters embrace our police and the rule of law and should leave the Capitol now. Okay? But it was Antifa. And I laughed at that one, too. The fake news media who encouraged this summer's violent and radical riots are now trying to blame peaceful and innocent MAGA supporters for violent actions. How often have you heard that trash? This isn't who we are. Our people should head home and let the criminals suffer the consequences. So now when you're looking at January 6th at 3:45, we talked about when everything started. You remember the 187 minutes started about, what, 1:10 p.m.? People forget there were 7.5 hours starting around 11 a.m. where there was actually no comms in the actual phone records for President Trump. Do you guys remember this? A lot of issues with these. They were in a bad spot right now. They already knew it wasn't Antifa, but they had to come up with some stuff. And they also had to try to escalate. The text I'm going to read with Donald Trump Jr. is going to talk about why they needed that de-escalation. But as I'm reading these type of things and you're looking at how many people are on these text messages, it's pretty amazing. There's another one in January 6th, 2021 from Jason to Mark Meadows. Let me tell you who was on this thread. It's Jason Miller, Mark Meadows, Dan Scavino, and Jared Kushner. You know, a lot of this didn't come out because there was so much data. I literally think you could do a whole investigation just off the Meadows text messages. Right now, and the reason it's interesting Jared Kushner's on this one is because Donald Trump Jr. was getting really scared about this time too. Chief, Jared, Dan, Chief, that's Meadows. Please find an improved statement from the president to go out right as they're finalizing the votes, which are expecting at 3 a.m. There was some members caving. Okay. The members that are approving the election, they're saying are caving. Guys, I know it looks like just a sentence, but this is the stuff that strikes people who are looking at this. This is what they believed, right? He already said they need to go home, but now they're worried about members caving and not voting with him, which was opposing the electors. Mrs. Trump has also signed off. So there you have it. Nobody but the four of us have heard this statement. Regarding logistics, this likely should come from the White House, but it has to be ready to go out as they're starting the final vote. In the background, that a statement will be coming at the time of the vote, even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the election and the facts bear me out. Okay. I've always said we could continue our fight to ensure that only legal votes were counted. Nevertheless, there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. This is the quote. While this represents the end of the greatest first term in presidential history, it's only the beginning of our fight to make America great again, and that's the utilization, and this is my opinion, the utilization of the J6 conspiracy theories to win the 2024 election, which would to mobilize voters under a sort of fantasy. You heard Tara read a statement on January 6th today. That's a lie. You can trust presidential comms team putting that out. And great question. Okay, here we go. Leave that up. Why would Democrats try to block the transfer of power to Democrats? That is a common sense question that nobody can get around. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? And here it even gets nuttier if you want to ask your friends who believe this. If the election was stolen, why did the Republicans take the House? Same ballot line. Also ask them how all 50 states, how they conduct their elections. And ask them on the states they believe there are conspiracies, ask them how it was done and what kind of voting systems they used. Off the cuff. Why did they turn on Meadows? Well, Meadows got turned on because I tell you this, and I don't know what part you're talking about, but I do know after he gave his text messages, it wasn't great for Mark Meadows. I mean, my goodness. That gave me insight. When you talk about somebody who's done counterterrorism and radicalization studies and actually done operations, I mean, you're just looking at radicalization documents, you know, Scott Perry, military, I believe 1-star, right? Talking about actually handling the cyber effort, coming up with new theories, audits, making up new conspiracy theories. But I want to read something from Scott Perry really quickly that I think will scare everybody. And then I have to think about how much longer everybody wants to go. Here's what I'm going to end it with. And then I'll take a couple of questions and we're done because that'll be 2 hours. And you guys can play this back, look at the sourcing. and say, Denver, we would like for you to do this again because there's so much I didn't get to, but I don't want to exhaust you. And that's the truth of it. This is the one I think that bothered me because we saw other actors building memos to have NSA or the National Command Authority seize all voting machines. This is in text messages. I want you to, did you hear what I said? November 12th, 2020, Scott Perry to Mark Meadows with Jim Jordan on the text thread. From an intel friend, DNI, Director of National Intelligence, needs to task NSA, the National Security Agency, to immediately seize and begin looking for international comms related to Dominion with China malware involved. How many conspiracy theories did I do just in the first 4? As you guys know, China conspiracy theories were vast. Also the German server farms, satellites changing boats, Italy. I think I counted at one time there were between 18 and 22 major conspiracy theories. They wanted NSA to seize international communications related to Dominion voting machines, which we know is insane. Here we go. Last one of the day, so everybody can have a good, joyful feeling going home tonight for dinner. November 12th, 2020, 9:28. Scott Perry to Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan on the line. Very short. Are you ready? DNI, Director of National Intelligence, needs to be tasked to audit their overseas accounts at CIA and their National Endowment for Democracy. The National Endowment for Democracy, which was a heritage think tank conspiracy theory target, and also alleged to be used to help overthrow the Chavez government in 2001, 2002. So, my friends, Venezuela now brought into the, we're back to Venezuela. My God, what an end, guys. Denver frickin' Riggleman does know a little bit about what he's talking about. That's because, though, of my training in the military, National Security Agency, my officers and those beneath me who just served with honor and integrity, the people around me who were better technically to this together, those who helped with the idea of how to structure this. It actually is a team effort when people who want truth and integrity in the United States actually come together. And I'm grateful. Hunter Walker, I want to thank you. This book, 5 years later, is the only one about the data. You know, a lot of people said, well, Denver, why didn't you put anything in it? When I wrote this book, it came out in September of 2022. I actually thought that there would be indictments, and I did not want to put too much into there, but I wanted the American people to know, and thank God I did. Regardless of the hate that I got from the left and the right, people who said things about it. So there you go. All right. Why didn't the committee bring these texts up? Scared of further violence or believing that the legal processes would take care of this? They did read some of the texts, as you guys remember, in some of the hearings. But these texts also damaged other people that were close to committee members or actually put out more conspiracy theories that could radicalize people. These text messages also were the baseline for how they did their subpoenas. So the text messages were used in a way that was incredible. Adam Kinzinger actually covers it. Without the text messages, I don't know where we would have gone. And to be honest, the MVP of the entire investigation is Mark Meadows. Thank you, Mark, for the help that you gave the January 6th committee. And I appreciate it. So if it wasn't for him, I don't know where we would have really started, because that allowed us to see what was going on with the communication networks. So there you go. I hope you guys got something out of this. My name is Denver Riggleman. This is The Breach. And it was great to see everybody. And if you have any questions, think about it. And when I get Denver After Dark, Sunday night, we can go over this again, but I'll do some more readings in the following months. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And thank you for everybody that joined us today.